Anyway, the Donald Trump tax thing. I was reading a piece here written by Ryan Ellis. Okay, Ryan Ellis, and this guy's coming to Trump's defense, and he's saying that it's absolutely absurd the way the Democrats and the media have been reporting Donald Trump as somehow doing something wrong. Okay, no one, and I want to make sure and stress this. Okay, no one pays more in taxes than you're legally required to. I want you folks to think of it this way. Think about your own personal taxes that you do. When you meet with your tax person, the tax person, how many children do you have? Let's say you have 3 kids, and let's say 3 dependents, and you're able to write off the 3 dependents. How many of you would say, we have 3 dependents that we can write off, but let's just write off 1. Or no, let's just not write off the dependents. And then your tax preparer says to you, what are you talking about? Legally, you're allowed to write these off. Well, no, we're not going to write it off. And then let's say you operate a small business. And your small business is like, well, you spent X amount of dollars on this. So here's how much revenue you brought in. Here's how much you spent for your merchandise. And here's your other expenses in this area and this area. How many of you are going to say to your tax person, no, don't write off my business expenses? Or I had losses. You had losses, capital gains losses, or any other kind of loss. Okay, well, the way the IRS tax law is, you can write off those losses, and that reduces your taxable income. How many of you are going to say, no, don't write off those losses? I mean, would anyone do that? Folks, how is this any different if you're dealing in billions of dollars? Okay, that's really the only difference here, the amount of dollars. But philosophically, it's the same principle. Nobody pays more taxes than you're legally required to. Donald Trump merely paid the amount of taxes he's legally required to, and not a penny more. That's smart business. But Ryan Ellis, he wrote this piece for Forbes magazine. Ryan Ellis, just so you know, he knows a little bit about tax law, okay? He's one of the top tax experts in the world. For the Conservative Reform Network, he's their senior tax policy advisor. He's the former federal tax policy director at Americans for Tax Reform, and he's designated by the IRS as a, quote, enrolled agent, which is the terminology the IRS uses for saying that you're one of the best as far as tax law in the country, that the IRS designates you as, quote, an enrolled agent. That's who this Ryan Ellis is. And here's what he says, quote, over the weekend, the New York Times reported that they had obtained a copy of Donald Trump's 1995 New York State tax return. Whoever sent it committed a felony, by the way. It showed that he claimed a net operating loss, or NOL, of about $900 million that year. We were told that this tricky NOL, or net operating loss, was some sort of, quote, loophole in the media that only super rich bad guys like Donald Trump get to use. We were told that this relieved him of having to pay taxes for 18 years, a made-up number. In fact, a net operating loss is very common in business. Now, let me stop right here for a second, folks. The 18 years, that's only the maximum amount of time that Donald Trump theoretically could have taken to dig out of his hole of 916 million years, or $916 million. If he made $916 million in profit the following year in 1996, then he would have dug out of that hole in 1 year and then started paying taxes on whatever profits he made the following year. If it took him 5 years to dig out of that hole, then it takes him 5 years. And then on the 6th year, if he makes profit, then he starts paying corporate taxes on those profits. So he's only, quote-unquote, not paying taxes for however many years it takes him to make enough profit to dig out of the $916 million hole that was created from that really bad year. That's not avoiding taxes. That's not using, quote, loopholes. That's not anything like that. Anyway, Mr. Ellis goes on. He says, net operating loss is very common in business. About 1 million taxpayers had a net operating loss in the year 1995. 1 million! Donald Trump was merely one of those 1 million. It results from business deductions exceeding business income in a particular year. Under tax rules, this loss can be carried back up to 2 years or carried forward up to 20 years. Is this a, quote, loophole, as reporters are suggesting? That's not true at all. That's a business loss that should simply be eaten by taxpayers. Is that what anyone believes? Of course not. That Uncle Sam should be a full partner in your profits but not in your losses? How is that fair? We also heard that real estate depreciation of all things was a, quote, loophole. We've read that in the press. Could anything be more ordinary in business tax returns than simple depreciated deductions? Real estate depreciation is no loophole under any theory of tax law. Cost recovery for acquisition of a business asset is universally allowed, and it always has been. In the case of real estate, the recovery periods are painfully long, 40 years, 39 years, or 27.5 years, depending on the use of the building. Trump's not the only presidential candidate this year who had a big loss on their taxes. In 2015, the Clintons realized a capital gains loss of nearly $700,000. That will be available in perpetuity to offset capital gains they might incur. Unlike a NOL, a capital loss can slowly be used to offset other income, albeit at a slow $3,000 per year net of any other gains offset. So in other words, Hillary Clinton will probably be milking that $700,000 for even longer than 18 years. He goes on, it's not difficult to see how reporters got played like a fiddle here. Most of them have never actually run a business, much less learned about tax rules surrounding them. Folks, I guarantee you, Bill and Hillary Clinton know full well what net operating losses are. They know full well the IRS laws of carrying over debts into subsequent years to offset your profits for subsequent years until you have completely dug out of the hole of whatever debts you had. They know how that works. They know it works whether you're talking about hundreds of $1,000s or millions of dollars or billions of dollars. They know the same principle applies. These are the IRS laws. Everybody knows that. The New York Times knows that. Most of the Democrats in Congress know that. But in all fairness, your average voter on the street doesn't necessarily know that. And that's what Hillary Clinton's banking on. That's what the New York Times is banking on. That's what most of the media is banking on when they report this shock that, oh my, Donald Trump went who knows how many years without paying taxes. They know what a lie this is. They're just banking on you not knowing. All right, you're listening.